All right, welcome back. So we are on to session 6 of the morning, that long morning obviously, and we're here to talk about a big kaupapa, data, right? So the session today is, well, the big question that we're looking at answering is data the new land in Aotearoa, in reconciling Maori data with iwi? So data, as we all know, is fast becoming one of the most valuable commodities available in society. In the current environment, organisations and entities with access to data can gather insight and utilise these findings to gain influence and develop strategies to map pathways forward. In many cases, the collection of data has been the domain of government agencies and consumer-based enterprises, while iwi and Maori have generally not been part of that equation. As a result, significant amount of Maori data, or more specifically, data about iwi members, is not in the hands of Maori. So again, very important kaupapa, and I'm glad to, have these wonderful guests here today to explore this kaupapa, because it is very important in terms of the future of our communities and our people, and there still is a relative lack of understanding of what that power actually is when it comes to data. So before we jump into our kōrero, I'm going to hand over to our wonderful manuhiri to introduce themselves.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you for having us. Nō ki te honore, kia noho wanganui a koutou i tēnei wā. Hewiri tēnei no te taitokerau, ko maunga tani wha te maunga ko tāpapa te awa, ko maunga moka te marae, ko ngā puhi te iwi. E noho ana hau ki konei ki tāmaki makaurau, ko taku mahi, wanganui i te whānau o Deloitte. Engari, me noho mari kei wanganui a koutou i tēnei wā. Nō reira, tēnā koe. Kia ora.
Kia ora. O tēnā tātou. Me ki rā mai maki tū ki Tongariro, tēnei e mihi kautuana kia tātou katoa. Me ki rā kua hau tētihi o nā kaiwhakahaere o Deloitte, o ti rā o Haurua Pairo. Kia ora everyone, my name's Tamarapa. I'm a partner at Deloitte in our strategy and business design team. We got told to intro ourselves, but not take too long. So I'll give you the cut down version of my life. So lawyer by background, but now a partner in a Big Four firm. I lead our Māori consulting practice, and before joining Deloitte, also worked out in iwi organisations as well, and Te Ohu Kaimwana, Ngāti Whakaue, and Tūwharetoa. Yeah, so. Great to be here. Thank you for having us.
Oh, lovely to have you. And as mentioned, I think we're going to dive straight into the deep end here. So my first question is, what types of data do iwi want to collect or get access to, in your experience?
I think particularly now in the recent climate and with all the health reforms happening at the moment, health data has become a big topic within iwi, with the establishment of more iwi on governance levels and te ao hauoro in the health space. The health sector, health data has become more of a commodity or more demand from our iwi to be put in positions to make such informed decisions, health decisions for their iwi, has enabled them to need and to want more specific data to make those informed decisions. So I think particularly health data is at the forefront of iwi at the moment, with a lot of other data sets that are required, but I think at the moment health is a priority, one of the priorities amongst iwi at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, especially off the back of a pandemic. It really kind of highlights the need to have some kind of ownership or something over that space. Over that space. The pandemic, the immunisations, obviously quick responses, needing to know who's in their communities, what ages are in their communities, what type of diseases are in their communities, and how them best to serve their communities. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Like the government kind of collects this mountain of data, right? And you look across Ministry of Education, ACC, Ministry of Health, Te Aka Whai Ora, etc., Te Whatu Ora, data rich, information poor. And so part of the trick, I think, is for some iwi entities, not for all, how does government and private organisations, how do we make information accessible to allow more informed decision making when we think about the role of iwi entities? An iwi are, it's a big concept, right? Like they're comprised of hapu, and hapu are comprised of whānau, but within that kind of iwi construct, there are land entities, there are Māori health trusts, there are NGOs, right? And they all have important roles to play. And one of the key roles is around advocacy. So, you can't advocate for and on behalf of your people if you're not possessed of the information that relates to them. And that's the kind of critical thing, right? How do we allow that information to flow in a much more organic way rather than it just being this massive repository that government holds on to? And they've got so much of it, they don't know what to do with it. Like we've got a client that we work for in Wellington, and they have so much data that they literally cannot get through it. And you fill these forms out every time you get sick, and you look at that and go, why are you even collecting it? Like, what's the point, right? So data, incredibly important. Is it the new territory? It's a taonga, right? When we think about how important it is for us in terms of decision making, there's that old kōrero e, hea te kai o te rangatira he kōrero, hea ho te nako o te kōrero, te mātauranga. If we don't have that information base to inform what we're talking about, then how do we advocate for and on behalf of our people?
Yeah, and where are we at on that journey? I mean, you talk about advocacy being a key role at this point in time, but, we think of skills of data analysts who understand te ao Māori. We think of any of those collection points around the data, like where are we actually at in terms of, taking control of our data?
So I think part of it's about trying to open up the pipeline, and that's tricky. Into government because there's Privacy Act issues. So how do you anonymise the information so that you can get access to it in a way that gives you something that you can actually use, and then allow you from a iwi perspective. And please, we're not coming along representing Te Arawa or Tūwhare Toa, that we've got some ideas. We're just from those iwi, from Ngāpui. So how do you open up the pipeline? How do we get that data into organisations to then allow it to take place? There's some really cool stuff going on. So Department of Internal Affairs has got MOUs with the iwi leaders group, with the iwi data forum to start looking at how data can be exchanged between iwi organisations. So it is beginning, but we're still a long way off.
Yeah, awesome. And so what does Māori data sovereignty look like from an iwi perspective?
I think with principles of data sovereignty, but I think in terms of iwi, it's having firstly access to the data, having capability to hold that access, and having capability within their iwi to disseminate that data, but also having mana motuhake or ownership of the data of their people within their iwi. The iwi having that data sovereignty, but also they call it participant or the person, the individual, the whānau, having access to their data all the time, and that's quite, it's turbulent at the moment, and it doesn't always happen. So I think with iwi having that capability will improve what we call their data sovereignty priorities and positioning.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of room, a lot of opportunity.
There's definitely a lot of opportunity.
Yeah,
for iwi to grow in the data sovereignty space, have access, have ownership of it, and have access to it when they want to.
Yeah, sure. Would you want to add anything?
No, I totally agree with all of that.
Yeah.
What would I add? I think that part of the kind of puzzle is the fast-moving nature of technology and how quickly things are progressing in this space. I know that future census So 2028 is going to be more admin data orientated, moving away from the kind of form filling, with a role for iwi to play in actually gathering and capturing the data for and on behalf of their people. So there's some really cool stuff beginning. It just feels like, man, it's taken a long time to get to this, right? But it is starting to flow.
Yeah. And I think, like as Tamarapa said, the data's there, government's got these massive repositories of it, but finding the best way and seamless way to quickly and easy get it to the iwi for them to then use. Yeah.
It feels to me like there's an opportunity for co-design of what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
Right? Because as we know, if it's by our people, for our people, or by the community, for the community that, a project is intended to serve, then we can step in and kind of help shape what that looks like for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of talk about community empowerment and community resilience, but if the organisations that are there in community, in place, on whenua, don't have the access to the data, then, just everything starts to get that much harder. Some massive opportunities, right, to optimise, get more efficient, and then improve outcomes, which is ultimately what it's all about, eh? We want better outcomes for our people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess taking big, lofty aspirations or goals and breaking them down into actionable, steps and things that we can do. Even around digital equity. I mean, how accessible is the data from a connection perspective, and how do those projects run in parallel to, accessing data in the first place?
Yeah, Ministry of Education are classic, eh? Like I don't know if they still do, but like 3 or 4 years ago, they used to just have everything up on their website. And so their response was, look, it's all there. We're 100% transparent. But you had to wade through table upon table upon table. It's not accessible. So, I think there is, yes, there's data, but there's also information. And how do we take that data and turn it into things that are actionable, that we can use, that fit within our kaupapa, that meet our mana motuhake requirements?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And how do we create our new pūrākau around, that information, that new wisdom?
Yeah, and I think that ties into having appropriate data dashboards and stuff that are designed by the iwi as well, because they'll know what their data dashboard needs to look like to capture what they want to capture versus just giving what they're given.
Yeah. And knowing, I actually can use my dashboard.
They can use it.
Yeah.
They can use it and then they can contribute to it. Yeah.
Like iwi Māori partnership boards, right? Like classic example.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You want to talk more about that?
Yeah, well, just so iwi Māori partnership boards been given this amazing opportunity to make decisions for their iwi health decisions, but just at the moment just needing the data to help inform those decisions and the dashboards to give live data. In the past, iwi have gotten it 6 months after, so they'll get their COVID immunisation rates 6 monthly, but it's 6 months late. So having live dashboards to make better on-the-spot informed decisions would help. So that's an opportunity in progress at the moment as well.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good, Mahi.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a role for te tiriti or waitangi, to give iwi the right to their data?
Definitely. I think if we think of data as a taonga, right, that it's so intimately linked to who we are as a people that I think it would be hard to imagine a world where it's not captured within the treaty. I do think there is an obligation, a duty, a relationship that we have with our data that the government needs to provide for.
Yeah. And are you actively working in that space? Is this something that Deloitte's sort of involved in or part of, or you individually?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. We are working on some data platform projects at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
And part of the tricky thing is, data sovereignty as a concept, as a kaupapa, is often talked about, but not often actioned. And so lots of government agencies will talk about the importance of data sovereignty because they know that it is, he kaupapa nui, so they know that they need to sort of acknowledge it, but they're not quite taking that kind of critical step to, okay, what is our strategy around data sovereignty? How do we implement it? What does it look like? What are the relationship agreements we need in place? How do we build capability? How do we transition knowledge? You totally do it, right? But they're just, they're just starting to begin those take those steps.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are doing that in tech though, right? Like, if you've either been in it for quite a while and you kind of understand it deeply, it becomes second nature, or you're feeling like, what is tech, or what is data, or what is data sovereignty?
Or it's too much, or
Yeah, so I know myself, I find I walk in those worlds quite often, and you kind of become a bit of a bridge, as to how to make it actionable and doable and create the future that we want to see, I guess.
Yeah.
So, thinking ahead, I guess, what, in your opinion, does the future of data look like for iwi?
I think, like incorporating iwi in the conversation as to what's not working. We did one project and we went out, it's just sort of the agreements data platform wasn't working at the moment, wasn't helping the equitable populations. So we went out and we spoke with them. So we met with providers on the ground. We spoke with marae groups, iwi, to say what's working and what's not working. I think that's a key step in the process, is to get their voice, to know what's actually not working and what does work, and then use that voice to design what's going to work for them. So sometimes these massive data systems are not going to work for our iwi, so we need to simplify it. So I think including iwi and whānau in the conversation right at the start, not right at the end when we've already done the mahi, and then saying, hey, this is fit okay.
Not 6 months later.
Yeah. But including them at the start, and you'll get a lot of, you'll get a different story if you put them in at the start, as to what's going to work for them and what's not going to work for them. And like Tamarapa was saying earlier, like data is the powerhouse for their informed decisions or for informed making, and they've been given all these positions to advocate for their iwi, but not informed with the data to support their knowledge. So having that accessible for them in the way that works for them will definitely help paint a different story moving forward.
Yeah. Have them there designing solutions.
For
themselves.
For themselves, and for their unique iwi, as we know, each iwi likes to do things differently. So what's going to work for them and what's important to their iwi. Is important as well.
I think probably at a minimum, right, it's more partnered responses. So, a lot less of just government coming in and doing it, that it's partnered with iwi organisations, with iwi entities. Some of the structural stuff needs to get sorted out so we can see, where and how the data is going to flow and what it will impact and influence. But if we think about, Census 2028, that's going to look radically different to the census that we've just had. So how do we do that in a partnered way with more iwi, so that they're actually collecting the data and are receiving it at the same time that government's receiving it? Because so many critical decisions are made off the back of that, big funding allocation decisions that influence, outcomes for generations. So it's fundamentally important, It's a big building block.
Yeah, sounds like land.
Totally right.
Big transactions that are going to impact future generations.
Health is one part of the economy.
It is important, and I guess it's just really great to have this kōrero with the two of you who are working on this day in and day out, and good to know that you're working on this day in and day out, because it is going to impact the future of our young people, of our rangatahi, of our children. So keep up the good mahi. I mean, we're about to kind of close off our session. Is there anything else that you want to mention of, or you feel like we haven't discussed?
I mean, I think data's huge. There are some really cool things going on to also sort of put our own protections around it. So some of the mahi that Te Huku Media are doing around, putting a circle around their mātauranga, their reo, so that others can't come in and sort of freely harvest. And it's interesting in our space because we get to see a lot of things going on. The other day this app floated up, and they were looking for pilots where they can translate health products into Indigenous languages. And you look at that and go, okay, you know, and I don't know if it was actually an Indigenous-led organisation or not, so aroha mai if it is. But there's a whole question around just, you know, IP, intellectual property, who owns that language. This isn't the free commons anymore, right? Like we have a vested interest in making sure that we are safeguarding who we are, what we are, in our own whenua, and, you know, data sits at the heart of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good way to sum it up, and, you know, reminds everyone watching and those of us here to be mindful of, you know, our own individual data as well as the collective. You know, as Maori, we're always looking after each other and thinking of, you know, the wider whānau. But that's a really good reminder to, just be mindful. You know, that selfie. Oh, no, I mean,
While you jam it up on Facebook,
It is.
Yeah, no, awesome. Thank you both for coming in for the kōrero today. And thank you all for watching. We've had an awesome morning this morning talking about all things te ao Māori and technology and in the Māori space. And as you can see, or as we've heard, you know, the future is bright with that whakaaro Māori there, you know, to be worked with, to be listened to be treasured as a taonga. So, I hope that you've enjoyed all of this beautiful kōrero, and that the rest of the day and the sessions this afternoon go smoothly. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thanks
Kia
for
ora.
having us. Kia ora.